Every day at exactly 6:30 a.m., an elderly man named James would walk his golden Labrador Bailey through the small coastal town. Residents watched them with admiration. The dog perfectly trained, never pulling on the leash, always attentive to his owner's movements. But what fascinated people most was that James never spoke a single command. Bailey seemed to know exactly what to do, when to stop, when to turn, as if reading his owner's mind. "It's incredible how well trained that dog is," whispered Mrs. Wilson to her husband as they watched from their porch. "I've never seen anything like it," replied Mr. Wilson. "He never even needs to say a word." But no one suspected what was really happening. No one imagined that James was hiding a secret that would change the way everyone in town saw him and his loyal companion. Until one morning, everything changed. Lisa, a new resident in town, was jogging along the beach when she noticed something unusual. James and Bailey were walking ahead of her, following their usual route. But then, Bailey suddenly stopped. James continued walking for a few steps, seemingly unaware his dog was no longer beside him. Lisa slowed her pace, watching curiously. Bailey stood perfectly still, his body tense, his gaze fixed on something in the distance that Lisa couldn't see. Then, without any visible signal, James also stopped. He didn't turn around, didn't call the dog's name. He simply froze in place, as if he too had sensed what Bailey was focused on. Lisa felt a strange chill. How did he know the dog had stopped without looking back? How did they communicate without words, without gestures? After a moment of complete stillness, James whispered something. Lisa couldn't hear the words, but immediately Bailey resumed walking as if nothing had happened. James smiled slightly, and they continued their morning walk. But Lisa had seen it. She had witnessed something that didn't make sense, and from that moment on, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, she deliberately waited for James and Bailey to pass by her house. There they were, right on schedule, walking in perfect synchronization. But this time, Lisa observed more carefully. Bailey never looked up at James. He never received visual commands. He simply walked beside his owner, matching his pace perfectly, stopping when James stopped, turning when James turned. It was as if they shared one mind. Lisa felt another chill. There was something strange about their connection, something that didn't seem natural. That evening, Lisa decided to learn more about James. She asked her neighbors about the quiet man and his extraordinary dog. "Oh, James has lived here forever," said Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman who ran the local bookstore. "He keeps to himself mostly, especially since his wife passed away 5 years ago. Bailey has been his companion through it all." "Has Bailey always been so perfectly behaved?" Lisa asked. Mrs. Peterson nodded. "That dog is special. James never needed to train him much. It's like they understand each other on a different level." "Does James ever speak to anyone in town?" "Very rarely," Mrs. Peterson replied. "He lost his hearing gradually over the years. He's almost completely deaf now. That's why he doesn't talk much anymore." Lisa frowned. Something didn't add up. "If he's deaf, how does he command his dog?" Mrs. Peterson smiled knowingly. "That's what makes their bond so special. Bailey doesn't need commands. He watches over James like a guardian angel." That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. The image of James and Bailey walking in perfect harmony kept replaying in her mind. There was something more to their story, something everyone was missing. The next morning, Lisa decided to follow them. She kept her distance, staying far enough behind that they wouldn't notice her. James and Bailey walked their usual route, heading toward the lighthouse at the edge of town. Suddenly, Bailey stopped again. His ears perked up, his body tensed. James, walking slightly ahead, also stopped without turning around. Lisa held her breath, watching carefully. Bailey turned his head, looking directly at a narrow path that led down to the beach. James remained still, waiting. Then, slowly, Bailey began walking toward the path, and James followed. Lisa hesitated, then decided to follow them. They walked down to a secluded part of the beach, where the cliffs created a natural barrier. Lisa hid behind a large rock, watching as James and Bailey stopped at the water's edge. Bailey barked once, the first sound Lisa had ever heard him make. James nodded as if understanding, and they both looked out at the sea. Minutes passed. Lisa was about to give up and leave when she spotted something in the water. At first, it looked like a large piece of driftwood, but as it came closer, she realized it was a person, a young girl, struggling against the current. Lisa gasped. The girl was barely keeping her head above water, clearly exhausted. She was about to run and help when something incredible happened. Bailey dove into the water without hesitation. James stood at the shore, his eyes fixed on the dog, swimming powerfully toward the girl. There was no panic in his expression, only absolute trust. Lisa watched in amazement as Bailey reached the girl, allowing her to grab onto his collar. With strong, steady strokes, the Labrador pulled her toward the shore. James waded into the shallow water to help, lifting the exhausted girl onto the beach. The girl couldn't have been more than 12 years old. She was shivering, coughing up water, but alive. "Thank you," she gasped, looking at James and Bailey. "I was swimming and the current... I couldn't get back." James nodded, smiling gently. He didn't speak, but his eyes conveyed understanding. Lisa stepped out from behind the rock, unable to contain herself any longer. "That was incredible. How did you know she was there?" James looked at her, surprised by her presence. Bailey immediately moved to stand between them, protective but not aggressive. "He didn't know," the girl said, still catching her breath. "Bailey knew. He always knows." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. The girl looked at James, who nodded, giving her permission to explain. "My name is Emma," the girl said. "I live with my mom in the blue house near the lighthouse. Bailey has saved me 3 times now." Lisa blinked in surprise. 3 times? Emma nodded. "I have a heart condition. Sometimes I collapse without warning. The first time it happened, I was walking home from school. Bailey was with James across the street, but he suddenly ran to me and started barking. I passed out seconds later. James called an ambulance." "But how did Bailey know?" Lisa asked. "The doctors think some dogs can sense changes in human physiology, like when someone's about to have a seizure or when their heart rhythm changes," Emma explained. "Bailey can sense when I'm in danger, even from a distance." Lisa looked at James, who was watching Bailey with profound affection. "And James is deaf. He can't hear Bailey bark?" Emma shook her head. "No, but they have their own way of communicating. Bailey uses different movements to signal different things. When Bailey senses I'm in trouble, he alerts James." "But the way they walk together, it's like they're connected somehow," Lisa said. "They are," Emma smiled. "James might not be able to hear, but he feels Bailey's movements. They've been together for so long that James can sense the slightest change in Bailey's behavior." Lisa looked at James with new understanding. "That's why you never give commands. You don't need to." James smiled and nodded. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something down, then handed it to Lisa. "Bailey is more than my ears," the note read. "He's my connection to the world." As they helped Emma back to her house, Lisa finally understood the secret everyone had been missing. James and Bailey weren't just an owner and his well-trained dog. They were partners in the truest sense, each compensating for what the other lacked, each making the other stronger. Word spread quickly through the small town. People who had admired Bailey's obedience now understood the deeper truth. The Labrador wasn't just following commands. He was protecting his owner and anyone else who needed help. The local newspaper ran a story about Bailey's heroic rescue. Pictures of the Golden Labrador appeared in shop windows. Children would wave excitedly whenever they saw James and Bailey on their morning walks. Lisa often joined them now, walking alongside, as James taught her the subtle signs Bailey used to communicate. Sometimes Emma would come too, her health improving with each passing day. As for Bailey, he remained as vigilant as ever, his golden eyes always watching, always alert. But now, when people in town commented on the remarkable bond between the man and his dog, they understood the beautiful truth. In a world where communication often fails, love creates its own language. And in the early mornings, when the town is still quiet, if you happen to see an elderly man and his golden Labrador walking in perfect harmony along the shore, you'll know you're witnessing something truly special, a silent conversation between two souls who have learned to speak without words. If Bailey's story touched your heart, remember that animals often perceive what humans cannot. Their loyalty and intuition can be the difference between life and death. Consider supporting service dog training programs or animal rescue organizations in your community, because sometimes the most heroic souls come with 4 paws and a wagging tail.